Hi guys. So today is our last review lesson. So the other lesson for this week is actually new material. Today's kind of the last of our round of review things that we've had so far. What we're looking at today, it's going to be a continuation of solving. Specifically though, we're going to look at solving literal equations. So you've seen these a little bit in most of your units. Basically, this is when you're solving for a specific variable. And your answer is going to be in terms of other variables. Many of you guys that have already taken physics have seen this, I'm sure. If you haven't taken physics yet, you'll probably see this come up in physics. But really all we're doing is just rearranging the equation, and our answer is going to be in terms of other variables. So each of these is going to be a little bit different. Each one's going to have its own strategy. So these examples really are just showing you a couple different possibilities. Each one of these you can work different ways. You can have your answers written in different forms. It's really just kind of reviewing some of the strategies we've talked about so far this year. So looking at this first one, we're solving for x. So first thing I want to do probably is multiply both sides by the square root of 1 minus x, or cross multiply, either way. So then at this point, if I want, I can divide by y. I can square both sides, so I can get rid of that square root. Then I can subtract 1. And then divide everything by negative 1. So I get that x equals 1 minus 1 over y squared. If you want to get a common denominator and combine those together, that's another correct form. But the form you write your answer in is really not very specific. As long as you have that variable isolated, you're in good shape. But again, if you wanted to, you could rewrite this as y squared minus 1 over y squared. That's also another form of your correct answer. All right, so let's look at our next one. So we've got a equals 1 minus x to the 2/3 and 1 plus x to the 2/3. So what we're going to do is we are going to rearrange this. Again, same thing, I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply here. So I'm going to have 1 minus x to the 2/3 is equal to a times 1 plus x to the 2/3. And then my goal here is to get x by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute. And then I'm going to get, again, everything with an x on the same side. So everything with an x on the same side. So I'm going to have 1 minus a equals x to the 2/3 plus ax to the 2/3. That allows me to factor out that x to the 2/3. And it allows me to divide by what it's with. Then my last step, I need to get x by itself. So again, I need to raise it to a different exponent. So it's x to the 2/3. I want it to be x to the first. So then the exponent that I can raise this to is the 3/2. And if I do it to one side, I do it to the other. So I end up with 1 minus a over 1 plus a to the 3/2 power. All right, so let's look at our next one. So this one is quadratic, and this one actually there's a little bit of an easier way to do this. And again, this is all about recognizing your perfect square trinomials. Now typically when we have quadratics, we like to set everything equal to 0. But in this case, this one's actually going to be easier to leave where it currently is, because you may notice that these three terms are a perfect square trinomial, which means they're going to be really easy to factor. This is going to factor into p minus 3q squared. And again, since we have it in this form now, we're not solving to see exactly what each one is. We're trying to get p by itself. So I can go ahead and, just like we do with completing the square root both sides. And then I'm just trying to get p by itself. So I'd add 3q. And I'm done. So again, it's all about recognizing some of those easy to factor problems. All right, now looking at 4. 4 is a little bit harder because we actually can't factor this one. So since we can't factor it, I'm going to need to use quadratic formula. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set this up as my a is my x. Okay, so that's a little bit harder. or not really harder, just different. That means your A coefficient in the quadratic formula is x, your B coefficient is y, and your C coefficient is z. So x equals negative B plus, A equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And it looks ugly, but that's really all we can do with this. There's not much else we can do because we really can't factor it. There's nothing that multiplies to xz that adds to y that we can really get out of those letters. So this really we're just going to leave in terms of really the quadratic formula with some different coefficients. All right, this next one, very much a rational equation. So as long as you remember how to solve rational equations, it's really not that bad. Again, you can either get a common denominator for all of them and solve the numerators. You can get a common denominator just for this left side and cross multiply. It's kind of just a matter of what your preference is. I'm going to go ahead and just combine everything on the left side for right now. So I'm going to multiply this one by R2, R3. This one needs R1, R3. And this one needs R1, R2. So I end up with R2, R3 plus R1, R3 plus R1, R2 all over that common denominator of R1, R2, R3. And that's all equal to 1 over R. So then at this point, we can go ahead and cross multiply. So I get R1, R2, R3 is equal to R times R2, R3 plus R1, R3 plus R1, R2. So really messy, lots of variables that look the same but are actually different. Then all we gotta do is divide. So I'm gonna end up with R1, R2, R3 divided by R2, R3 plus R1, R3 plus R1, R2. It's not very pretty, but that is your way to get just that single R by itself. All right, now looking at the last one. So another one that's a little bit messy. This is a big rational equation, one of those complex fractions. So again, multiple ways that you can do this, whatever makes the most sense to you. I'm going to go ahead and simplify the complex fraction that's over here on the right side. I think that's just a little bit of an easier way to get started. So I'm going to start by simplifying the top. So that means that I need to multiply by 2 and by r. So that gives me 2 plus r over 2r. Then I'm going to go down to the bottom, multiply by 2 and r, and I end up with 2 minus r over 2r. Now remember those two things are being divided. So this is 2 plus r over 2r divided by 2 minus r over 2r. When we divide fractions, we flip the second. Which means those two r's are going to cancel out. So everything on that right side is going to simplify to 2 plus r over 2 minus r. So now our goal is to solve for r. So now it's a pretty simple equation from this point. Again, method you choose to use is up to you. I'm going to go ahead and cross multiply. I'm going to get everything with an r on the same side. I don't know why I just chose to make it all my negatives, but that's okay. Factor out that r. Well, I guess I'll factor a negative r so I can divide by that negative 1. So that'll be p plus 1. Then we'll go ahead and divide, and that's going to leave me, I'll move it over here. So I've got 2p minus 2 over a negative p plus 1. Now again, with something like this, you've got a lot of different ways that you can write this. So it's possible to have a correct answer that just looks a little bit different. Like for example, if I move that negative up to the front or to the top, I could rewrite this as 2 minus 2p over p plus 1. That's still a correct answer, it's just a different way of writing it. So keep that in mind whenever you're solving these literal equations. All right, so very similar schedule for today. You've got your lesson video in your notes. practice problems, again, your answers may look different than my answers. They can still be correct even if they're in a different form. Make sure to show your work on those. If you need help, you've got that Thursday Zoom session. Otherwise, send me an email or fill out that video request, and then you've got that 8A check on Friday. All right, so then we've got some new stuff for Thursday, and that is going to be it for Algebra 2, at least math content-wise. So we're almost at the end. I hope you guys are doing well, and feel free to reach out if you need anything.